Good afternoon. How are you? Well, it's sunny and it's almost warm. It's 60 degrees, so it's pretty pleasant. And catching you at the end of the day when the sun is hard in my eyes. So there we are. Let there be light. America seems to have a lot of shade these days, and while I'm not fixed on it, trying to choose the center of the fraud that is the right-wing effort to commit a coup and to overthrow a democratic government for an autocratic form hangs heavy with all of us. We think about it. We're glad when we don't mention he whose name we'd rather forget and whose service we find unkind and whose character is of the lowest. We'd rather not deal with that. But why is there always a lawyer at the center of these things? I'm thinking of Eastman. Eastman, if you remember, he's the person who wrote the coup memo. That is to say, how do we take over the country having lost the election? And day by day we find that he knew all along that he was making arguments about fraud that didn't exist in states that had denied there was any fraud, including Georgia, that he was working with the president in emails, as it turns out, 8 of which were considered by Eastman to be privileged, but the court said that they weren't because of the crime-fraud exception, and I'll mention that in a minute. His plot was pretty simple. His plot was to claim, A, that there was fraud in the election, though none was demonstrated, to get shadow electors, darkness, if you will, who would say that they thought their state, fill in the blank, Georgia, Pennsylvania, Michigan, had not properly chosen electors and that they were the righteous electors. Then the theory was that when Pence had the opportunity to vote for, not to vote, to count and to say who won the election, he would choose Trump, even though it wasn't justified. And he would do that based on the objection that, look, the electors aren't right. And one way or the other, they thought by delaying and disrupting that they could get to a point where they could throw it to the Supreme Court and delay it ad infinitum. So it was a combination of bad conduct by Pence, absolutely necessary, but they didn't get it. Electors who would be acknowledged by Pence, or somehow in the chambers, so that they could throw this back to the states and give themselves time to violate the law of electors in the Constitution based on facts that weren't true, on a theory that wasn't lawful. So why is he on my mind today? Well, because yesterday Judge Carter, who was reviewing documents, including emails, including attorney-client documents, so-called, released some of those documents to the January 6th committee that had asked for them. And what the court decided was that there were 8 that were to be produced because of the crime-fraud exception. And what this means is you have a conversation with your lawyer, and you tell him, a week ago I robbed a bank. What can I do about it? The lawyer can give you advice about that and about the defense of what's already transpired and is behind you. Guy walks into your office and says, I've taken these 2 steps to set up a conspiracy to rob the bank, and I was wondering what you think of this other one that I have. And the lawyer says whatever he does. And then they come to the lawyer afterwards and they say, we know that he visited you before he committed this robbery. What did he say? And I said, well, I'm not going to tell you. Why? Attorney-client privilege. And they say, well, wait a second. The crime was going on while he was talking to you. So there's an exception to the privilege if there's an ongoing crime when a person is seeking your advice, particularly on that crime. So there are 8 letters that Judge Carter decided Eastman wrote, and I understand they're to Trump, and they have the crime fraud exception. There are newspaper stories that say that Eastman and Trump work together. There was an earlier opinion by Judge Carter that he thought there was sufficient evidence that one could indict Trump. And so he did not think this application was frivolous going back some. And now he's opined that some of the emails were subject to the crime fraud exception, elevating, it seems to me, the exposure of Trump. Now, here's the rub. Once again, we're at a point where we have a compelling statement, in this case by a judicial officer who has reviewed the documents and required more than the 8 to be given over to the January 6th committee. I think it was 33. And he also found that there were statements that Eastman understood that what they were doing was to delay or disrupt the procedure on the Hill. And we could go through all the statutes about disrupting Congress and seditious behavior and trying to overthrow the government and so forth, and all of them would find their position in this set of facts, set of intentions, concerted action among people from the Trump on down. And what are we going to do? We understand the January 6th committee had its last hearing, and now they have these documents. So, are they going to let us see them? So we're in a place of confusion. We're in a place where we don't have a clear plan. But the plan is obvious. And the plan is the committee should write an action memo that says we have these 3 points in mind. 1, no matter what happens in the midterms, Trump must absolutely be summoned to testify and to explain what appears to be criminal behavior to overthrow the government. 2, Pence should be called to testify for the same reason. 3, the Attorney General or special prosecutor by statute of the Congress should be appointed independent of the Justice Department that has given us pause, so that we can actually have a full and fair investigation and prosecution. The personnel for this investigation should not be selected by the head of the FBI unless that head is substituted by somebody else. You know, and there's more, but there are a couple of the very public issues that concern us. Wray, the head of the FBI, doesn't appear to be an honest, impartial broker. We should be concerned about that. We also have to be concerned about the fact that the committee, for some reason, doesn't want to call some people, doesn't want to go to court and fight about it. And then we have Garland. So, where do we end up? Our final retreat. The only avenue we can be sure that something will happen is you and I vote. I've already voted absentee. And we encourage others to vote. I'm doing that. And we speak about our candidates, whether you have 5 friends or 50,000, and you let them know who you support and why. Only Democrats. I don't care if the Republican is your uncle. You do not support him in this election. Because there is no such thing as a full, fair, just, constructive Republican. Not now. There have been in the past, there may be in the future, but right now, if you depend on it, you're fooling yourself, you're fooling the nation, you're putting the democracy at risk. Absolutely. I don't care if they're running for dog catcher this time. Even if it's not Congress, do not put them on the ladder to the point where they can be, by name recognition alone, by keeping their peace on what their true intentions are, enemies of our nation. So, we the people are the final and last vestige of hope for the country. Now, I'm not saying there aren't people in the Congress, in elected positions, on the bench, and so forth. But where's the beef? To borrow a statement by Reagan, I think we can say that about the Republicans. Where's the beef? But we can say it about the Democrats not fighting the right way for fear of losing their phony baloney jobs. So, that's what I got today. And I am in my my cathedral of trees. Wonderful day. Good to be with you. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.